Hey, and welcome. Today we're going to tackle this huge paradox that sits right at the heart of, well, everything. That constant battle between our need to fit in and the urge to completely change the world. It's this tension that really drives all progress, but it's also what makes real, meaningful change so unbelievably hard. So, let's get into it. Okay, so our starting point is this incredibly sharp insight from a sermon Martin Luther King Jr. gave way back in 1962. What he's basically saying is that our institutions, even the ones we count on to be our moral compass, often end up just protecting the way things are, instead of pushing for the way things should be. This idea is absolutely central to understanding the resistance every single innovator runs up against. So here's the game plan. We're going to connect the dots from a civil rights icon's philosophy to hardcore economic theory, all the way to the high-stakes drama of Silicon Valley. You'll see how these worlds, which seem so far apart, are all wrestling with the exact same problem, this paradox of progress. All right, first up, we've got to really understand the number one enemy of progress: conformity. And look, this isn't just about peer pressure. It's way bigger than that. It's a powerful, almost invisible force that's baked into the very structure of our society. You know, Dr. King really laid it out. The world is basically always whispering in our ear. Hey, you want a good, respectable life? Just go with the flow. The message is clear. Don't rock the boat. Don't take unpopular stands. Because success, recognition, security, those are usually the prizes for staying in line. And this is where King's critique gets really sharp. He's pointing out that even the church, an institution that's supposed to be a moral guide, can end up just reflecting society's worst habits, giving a thumbs up to things like segregation and exploitation, all just to keep things comfortable. It's a perfect and pretty chilling example of choosing the status quo over doing what's right. Okay, so if everyone is just trying to fit in, how does anything ever change, right? Well, it turns out there's this incredibly powerful economic force that's basically the antidote to the status quo. A guy named Joseph Schumpeter had a name for it: creative destruction. And the key is that progress isn't this gentle, gradual thing. No way. It's a storm. New ideas don't just add on to the old system. They smash it to pieces. Entrepreneurs are the ones lighting the fuse, constantly tearing down what exists to build something totally new. And hey, this isn't just some dusty old economic theory. We have tons of research, like stuff from MIT, showing that this constant churning, this creative destruction, it's what actually drives growth and gives us a higher standard of living. The old literally has to be destroyed to make way for the new. Okay, so disruption is key. We get it. But here's the million-dollar question. Does it actually pay to be the first one, to be the pioneer who starts the revolution? Or is it actually smarter to show up a little late to the party? This is like the classic debate, right? On one hand, you've got the pioneer, the first mover. They're first on the scene, they get to set the rules, build that initial brand loyalty, but they're also flying blind. They can get stuck with early, clumsy designs. But then you've got the perfecter. They get to waltz in, see all the expensive mistakes the pioneer made, and build something way better from the get-go. And you've seen this play out time and time again. I mean, think about it. Google didn't invent search engines. Starbucks didn't invent the coffee shop. They just perfected it. And Southwest, they didn't invent airlines, but they absolutely perfected the low-cost, short-flight model. They won by being better, not by being first. And that brings us to the really messy part of all this. This is the high-stakes reality for every single nonconformist out there, because the road to disruption is absolutely littered with failures. And, sometimes something much, much darker. See, the thing is, we have this huge blind spot. It's called survivorship bias. We only look at the winners. We celebrate the founders who made it big. We read their books. We try to copy their morning routines. And we totally forget about the thousands of others who had the exact same drive, the same routines, and still failed spectacularly. Their stories just disappear. I mean, just look at Nikola Tesla. The guy was an absolute genius. He basically imagined our entire modern electrical grid. But his biggest dream, this incredible tower for wireless communication across the globe, it completely bankrupted him. The result? He died broke and alone. A brilliant failure who bet it all on a vision the world just wasn't ready for. The personal cost can be devastating. Now, Tesla's failure was a noble one, but what happens when that pressure cooker environment, that fake it till you make it culture, pushes people over a line? What happens when you stop failing and you start faking. So let's look at the two faces of fake it till you make it. On one side, you have Microsoft back in the 80s. They were famous for selling vaporware, basically promising software that wasn't even close to being ready. Risky, yes, but eventually they pulled it off and delivered. Then, decades later, you get Theranos. They also promised a revolutionary technology, but it was all a lie. They faked results, put patients in danger, and committed massive fraud. And for Theranos, the consequences weren't just a bad stock price or an angry board. Founder Elizabeth Holmes was convicted on fraud charges, each one carrying up to 20 years in prison. That is the razor-thin but incredibly important line between having a bold vision and committing a crime. So here's the dilemma, right? We need nonconformists. Society literally can't progress without them. But the path is brutal, it's full of failure, and it's tempting to cheat. So how do you do it? How do you disrupt the right way? And for that, we're going to circle all the way back to where we began, with Martin Luther King Jr. King was way ahead of his time on this. He warned about this exact problem. People who start out as reformers but become so cold and self-righteous that they completely lose their humanity along the way. The rebellion wasn't about the cause anymore. It was all about their own ego. And that's its own kind of failure. So what was his solution? He called it the transformed nonconformist. And it's really powerful. It means you have the guts to stand up and fight, but you also have the humility and love to not become a monster while you're doing it. It's about knowing change takes forever, but still working like it could happen tomorrow. And this is the most important part. It's about serving something bigger than yourself. Your goal isn't fame or money, it's justice, peace, and brotherhood. So at the end of the day, the paradox is pretty clear. We need people who are willing to say no to the status quo, people willing to tear things down to build something new. But the why is everything. So the final question isn't really if you'll conform or not. It's when you choose to stand apart, what kind of nonconformist will you be?